Next question from Maya. Is it possible for people to learn a language fluently in 3 months? So this question, I think it comes up a lot when people see the name of my blog and the name of the other YouTube channel that we have as our main community YouTube channel, and of course the book and everything. And I think it requires a little bit extra explanation because some people may have a lot of misconceptions when they see this. But effectively, I believe you need to have a specific goal in your project. So when I started my blog, the reason I chose that title is because I really wanted to emphasize you need a specific goal in a specific timeline. So for me, fluency is specific. It's not this general vague concept. It is truly on the European Common Framework. I set that to be the B2 upper intermediate level, where effectively I'm socially equivalent in the language. And then the 3 months was initially geared towards the periods that I would travel for, because a tourist visa limit is 3 months in a lot of countries. But even nowadays, I find that it's kind of like this Goldilocks zone of it's not too big and not too small a time period, because a small time period, you can't really push yourself too much forward in the language. You can't make a big giant leap ahead in your current level. Like you can't do that in 2 weeks or a month. But then if you give yourself a whole year, like a lot of people would do with resolutions, this year I want to learn Spanish. The problem is that is so far away in the future that you don't really have any need to intensively learn it, and you can keep putting things off. So for me, 3 months had that purpose. Now, I wouldn't recommend that everybody go and have a Fluent in 3 months project. The whole goal of the blog is to give you tools for our learning philosophy. So I'm absolutely not guaranteeing anybody who follows our advice is definitely going to learn a language fluently in 3 months. What I am going to suggest is that you can use our philosophy to find a realistic goal for you that you can very realistically achieve in whatever time frame you set yourself. That could be 6 months, it could be 2 months. Your goal could be fluency, it could be conversational level. There's a lot of wiggle room there. Now, when I have a Fluent in 3 months project, one thing about that is generally I would have the months leading up to it. I would be working very hard on my main stuff, whether that be the blog, or before the blog was successful, I was a freelance translator. So I'd be working more so that I'd have free time. And that meant that for my most successful projects, I actually did have a good 8 hours a day that I could invest in learning a language. And I know that is not realistic for a lot of people. Ironically, it is actually a little bit more realistic nowadays because a lot of people are at home. They don't necessarily have as much work that they need to do. But for the most part, it's not realistic for most people. So this was unique to me, but I still feel that you can do a lot in 3 months. And it's one reason why, if anybody isn't familiar with it, if you check out on the blog, fluentin3months.com, and click the courses button, you'll see we actually run the Fluent in 3 months challenge. And in the Fluent in 3 months challenge, we're not actually getting people to be fluent in 3 months. We're getting people to see what is their actual goal in the language. And generally, that is to have conversations. And what we do stick to is that 3 months. And then the Fluent in 3 months part of the title is more that it's sticking to the philosophies that you would have seen us grow on the blog over the last 11 or so years. So the Fluent in 3 months challenge has a lot of the aspects of the missions that I know you guys would have followed me on over the years, where I had very regular video updates, which was great for me because it gave me that accountability. I have to upload a video, so because of that, I feel more pressure to actually make real progress ahead of that next video, or I need to, up my frequency of lessons and such. So we have other people who are doing the challenge to upload their videos. And then at the end of it, at the end of my 3 months, I would be working up to a main video, which would generally be me interviewing somebody or them interviewing me, or some kind of conversation with a native speaker. And we implemented that into the Fluent in 3 months challenge. So if you're curious, check out the details on the Fluent in 3 months challenge on the blog. But in general, I would say, to answer the base question, is it possible to learn a language fluent in 3 months? The first language that I tried to learn as an adult was Spanish, and it took me a whole year, at least a year, to get to a level I would call fluency. So I was not born with this innate talent to learn a language in 3 months, but I have had successful fluent in 3 months projects, and this has been because over the years I have learned where my strengths lie. I've learned to embrace making mistakes. So I think realistically, as a very, very first challenge, you can't possibly be aiming for fluency in 3 months because there's a lot of other non-language related things that you need to fix. Like we were mentioning before, routines. You need to be getting on top of your routines. You need to learn how to get over your lack of confidence in speaking the language because that's going to slow you down a lot. And all of these other things, these are the things that make you become a better language learner. And I think for a lot of people who have had that process and who've learned that, it then does become possible that maybe they could aim for that goal. But do they really need to? Like that's the thing. If there's an actual need, that's where what drives things. The need for me was I was giving myself 3 months in this country, and that's the time I had. I had another project that was coming up afterwards. Nowadays, I tend to spread out my time a bit more because I don't have a need to learn the language in 3 months, but I will in future have 3 month projects, and they will be geared towards whatever the timelines and needs that I happen to have in those projects are. So I'd say as a beginner language learner, you can absolutely do a lot in 3 months, as long as you are realistic with yourself about what you're aiming for, and you can talk with our community and we can help you figure that out. And then I think once you get experienced in language learning, you learn where your strengths lie and you get through the difficult processes. It could potentially become possible, but it's never been my goal to prove that it's possible. At the end of the day, Fluent in 3 months is an example of specific target in a specific deadline. That is an aspect of language learning I highly recommend you embrace. Whether that's have your first conversation within a week or a month or whatever it may be, or pass an exam within 4 months, have a specific goal in a specific timeline. That is what Fluent in 3 months is all about.
There's just a couple things that I want to add. The first is that with the Fluent in 3 months challenge, the goal at the end of the 90 days is to have a 15-minute conversation in your new language. Or if you've done a challenge in the past, there's also advanced and polyglot versions where your goal is slightly different. But as Benny said, the primary goal is to get you conversing. It's not fluency, but that 15-minute conversation is a really, really significant milestone on the way to fluency. The other thing that I want to add is I really want to get really mathematical for a second here. So sorry about this, Benny.
Mhm.
But just based on what you're saying in the 3 months, is it possible to get fluent in 3 months? Just if you're wondering about the general possibility. So if you look at the Defense Institute framework, they basically categorize, this is based on if your native language is English, of course. They categorize languages into 4 different categories, I believe. And those are category 1 through 4. 1 languages tend to be the easiest languages for English speakers to learn. So like French, I believe Portuguese is there, Spanish, languages like that. Whereas category 4 languages are languages like Korean. And so based on that, they say that a category 1 language takes about, it's like 680 to 700 hours of like coursework to learn. So if you look at that and then you divide that by 90, that gets you between 7 to 8 hours a day that you have to do to meet that hour. That's the hour requirement. So to meet that, you would need to do 7 to 8 hours of study every single day for 90 days. Now, that's assuming that you're spending the time studying the right things, that you're all of those, that entire 7 to 8 hours of study is focused. And I don't know anyone who can have like focused brain melting study for 7 to 8 hours a day. So while it is possible, if you are capable of doing that, you could totally reach fluency according to the Defense Institute's criteria in 90 days if you're spending 7 to 8 hours of focused study time a day on the language. That said, I wouldn't recommend doing that because that is really intensive. And Benny's like the only person that I really know who's done 8 hours a day study and has survived it not once, but on several occasions. I am not able to do that. And then plus that's assuming that you have absolutely nothing else to do with your time. So let's say you have a job, or you have kids, or you have school, or some other responsibilities. Those are going to take time and attention, and more importantly, energy away as well. So again, getting that focused 7 to 8 hours becomes even more challenging. But this leads to something that I would like to mention, and it will be in the show notes for this episode. Benny wrote this really incredible post on why you should think of language learning in hours and not in days, months, or years. So again, this question of fluent in 3 months, the 3 months, that's not actually a really good kind of marker for determining how long you need to study. Instead, it's about the hours. So again, the Defense Language Institute breaks the levels down by hours. And so the smaller window you do those hours, the faster you're going to learn the language. The wider window, which is basically what we tend to think about. It's like, oh, I've studied Spanish for 6 years. It's like, okay, well, how many hours in that 6 years? It's like, well, I went to a 1-hour class twice a week. So you spent 2 hours and then maybe another hour on homework. So 3 hours a week. And when you add that up, you very quickly see just how many hours you've studied. Whereas if you're an independent learner and you're learning even an hour a day, that's 7 hours a week. So that's already more than twice what you would have been doing in a class. And so that doubles the speed with which you could potentially learn a language.
Are you ready to take on a Fluent in 3 months challenge? If you're curious about what it takes, follow the link below to find out how you can join our vibrant community and have a 15-minute conversation in just 90 days in your target language.